This is my starter factory, and as you can see, things got a little out of hand. However, today, I'm going to be hiding this factory under a huge concrete dome, which is a lot easier said than done. But why? Not only do I completely want to redo this entire project, but I also want to improve the frame rate on my PC. Welcome to Operation Desert Dome. So let's start with the obvious question, where the heck do we begin? But I think what I want to try and do is just stretch a little concrete path that goes the entirety around our factory itself, and then try and work from there. Valhalla Pickle, I hear you say. What if you want to expand this factory in the future? Well, the honest answer is, I won't be. So that's why I kind of feel confident adding in this entire walkway around here, because I really can't see us expanding this ever again. By the way, I'll be leaving my Fixbus factory the way it is. I'm kind of happy where it is as of right now. It's not really causing that much lag. And with all of our modular factories around here, again, I'll be leaving it the way they are, because they're fine. Let's just assume for a moment that we have indeed covered the entire area in our concrete foundations. What do we do then? Well, I do want to make sure, obviously, that you can't see underneath this. So we are going to be covering everything else around here in our concrete walls. I will be using the 4-meter basic wall for this, because it just looks the nicest in my opinion. But how high do I want to try and go? Because obviously we've got our train station over there, which as you can see is rather tall, but I believe the tallest thing in this starter factory is actually our blueprint designer, and I don't want to be getting rid of this. So I'm thinking if we build 60 meters up with the walls, we should be okay, which is the equivalent of 15 of these things. There we go, yep, that leaves us with tons of room. I think this plan could actually be a good idea to try and help our frame rate, and of course this is going to take a while to do. Luckily though, I will be streaming this over on Twitch, where you can watch a bunch of my streams, and of course right here on YouTube as well. Projects like this can be rather tedious, but they can also be really fun as well, especially with Twitch chat and YouTube chat. So thank you to everyone that does tune into those streams. It does get me through the grind, so thank you very much for that. But yes, let's continue doing this. Just like that, our entire starter factory has now been covered by at least a 2 thick concrete foundation perimeter. However, some parts look absolutely hideous. Don't worry though, because that will all be mended over time. Now, what is next? Well, like I was explaining a little bit earlier on, I still want to try and add in our walls along here. So what I have to try and do now is go around the entire perimeter and try not to lose power there to my hover pack, and place down these walls right here. And of course, placing down these walls doesn't actually count the total height elevation of where I want to actually try and go to. This just makes sure that our factory doesn't look like it's floating, because that would look absolutely ghastly. It would look horrible, so I don't want that to happen. But I think it would be kind of interesting to work on this part of the factory, especially again when we are going to be going up, just to see how I'm going to be able to incorporate all this spaghetti and somehow get it to look nice. Yeah, this should be a bit of a struggle. And you know what? Things are actually starting to look really nice now that we've added this concrete wall into here. Of course, some parts are actually massive, like this. I mean, this concrete wall is huge, considering, again, we haven't really gone up vertically at all yet. All we've done is just build our foundation, then build our wall that goes from our foundation to the bottom of the dune deserts. But this is already rather large, so it has got me thinking, do I necessarily want to decorate this concrete cube? As of right now, I do not know. I still want to try and get all the foundation done first, then build everything up by about 15 meters, and then maybe we can have a look at decorating this thing. But as of right now, I'm happy with the way things are going, and let's continue. But yeah, progress is pretty good. And just like that, we've now added our concrete foundation and our supporting walls around the entire build. And as you can see, some parts look dreadful and require quite a lot of R&R, or a bit of like work on, let's just say. Most likely off camera, because yeah, this will take me ages to try and do. And this part right here is going to be an absolute nightmare. But I do very quickly want to try and talk about what I've decided what I want to try and do, as I've been talking to my stream about this a little bit. And I think what I'm actually going to do here is build a secondary wall upwards from here. Not from here, but one foundation back. This way we're going to have a nice path that stretches pretty much the entirety around this build. So let's continue with that concept, and let's also try and incorporate all of these conveyor belts into the project so that this doesn't look too bad either. But I don't want to add any glass. Like, I really don't want to have any glass here whatsoever. Literally just concrete both concrete walls and concrete foundations. And this is what I mean by a concrete wall. It literally just is a concrete wall. And look at the lag that we get now, by the way. Look at our frame rate. And then we go behind the wall. And that's already smoother. My idea... Okay, this is actually going to work. I think this is actually going to work. Okay, that's fantastic. So let's try and add a little something and see what this wall's going to end up looking like. If we like it, let me know in the comments down below. If you don't like it, also let me know in the comments down below. And I'll probably extend it all the way around our little cube factory box thingy that I'm trying to design. The desert dome, as I've called it. So let's see how this is going to go. So this is what we had before, and this is what we have now. And I know I suppose I'm going against the entire purpose of this build just being bland and boring, but I couldn't just have a random concrete wall going around the entire project, because that is just not my playstyle at all, I'm afraid. So what I've actually done is, despite the way it looks, I've actually kept things nice and simple. I've added these 3 light pillars here, which are the exact same pillars that I've used over in my aluminium factory, just reused and recycled in this format instead. And then what I've also done into the middle layer here, as the game lags, apologies for that, is I've added a catwalk, and I think this will look fantastic going around the entire factory. It gives us really good views there of the Dune deserts, and overall I think it just looks really, really nice. And that is essentially the first blueprint. The second blueprint on top of that has this very interesting, I was going to say weird, it's not really that weird, has a very interesting wall pattern, just so it doesn't look too bland or too boring, but overall I do quite like this. However, having said that, this is not the only blueprint I've designed. I've also come up with another one. This right here is the second blueprint, which, believe it or not, is the exact same as the first blueprint, just without these massive lights. And this is what's going to be looping around the entire way around the outer rim of this factory. Lastly, we've got this corner blueprint right here, which looks fine. However, before I add all of this around the factory, we have to still add the walls. So that's the very first thing that I want to try and do first. Let's loop around the entire factory. Let's add in these concrete, holy lag, add in these concrete walls, and then we'll add the decoration on the outskirts. Regarding the interior, I've still got no idea what I'm going to go with, but this is still a very good step in the right direction. And just like that, we have now built the wall around the entire perimeter of our starter factory, and I must say, from the inside, it looks a little bit like Maze Runner. Unfortunately though, that brutalisque sort of element I was talking about a bit earlier on is most certainly continued around the exterior of the project, where things are looking very bland and very boring. So now I definitely do want to try and add in those exterior elements I was showing you a bit earlier on. So let's do that now. And this is what one wall looks like. As you can see, it doesn't necessarily look too special, but considering it was literally just a concrete wall before, I think this is starting to look rather nice. These lights look fine, but honestly I feel like the real star of the show here is just a regular concrete here with the catwalk. I am quite happy with this catwalk, and I think the views do generally look very, very nice. And I was just saying this to the stream, but the reason why I'm not adding any glass here, even though I think it would look fantastic, is because it might contribute to the lag. And of course, the main reason as to why I'm building this entire thing in the first place is to sort of counter the lag. But yeah, this is our very first wall that we've got completed. I'm loving it so far. So let's continue by going around the entire project, which, judging by how long it took me to do this, and I still have to paint these 2 beams, by the way, this might take us a few more hours. Here's another side of our factory complete, and I must say, it's actually starting to come together now. At first, I really did not think this would look nice, but the more I build, the more I'm starting to like it. And a few hours later, and we have finally got our exterior completely finished. And this took so much longer to do than I thought. But honestly, I'm really happy with how it turned out. By no means is this perfect, but honestly, it definitely gets the job done. What next? Well, for that, we have to go up there. Because even though the outside looks relatively built, of course we've got absolutely nothing done in regards of interior. And we've also got huge gaps on these walls here as well. So now I think it's time to work on the roof. What I want to try and do everywhere essentially up until the beginning of this interior wall here is I want to make all of this concrete. Extremely simple. Then I've already got a blueprint designed for the roof. And essentially this is what we're looking at. So the underbelly is coated concrete, as you can see. But then above that we've just got regular concrete, which again looks completely fine. Then here in the middle, I've surrounded this ceiling light with some basic chrome walls like that. This way, from the top of the project, all you actually see is a concrete foundation, which just looks like it's supposed to be there. It doesn't look too out of place at all. But then from underneath, you actually get that shiny, reflective sort of look from the coated concrete, which should, again, reflect rather nicely from the light up here as well. Inside of this factory, it might lag quite a bit, and I'm completely fine with that. What I'm mostly trying to do with this project is trying to reduce the lag outside of this factory. And some time has passed, and already things are starting to look decent in some regard. I'm just doing the outside perimeter first with the light blueprints, then the inside will be so much easier to then do. But I must say, it is very weird having had this factory here now for over 700 hours, and it always being out in the outside. But now we've started to build everything inside. So it does definitely make the factory look rather weird, but I don't necessarily think it looks out of place. I'm really enjoying this build so far. Let's continue with the roof, which hasn't really taken as long as I thought it would. Let's then obviously connect the lights up here as well. Holy lag, there we go. We'll connect the lights, turn everything on, and then, wow, that would be a massive step forward with trying to complete Operation Desert Dome. And just like that, this is so weird for me, but you know what? We've done it. Do I think there's too many spotlights? Potentially, yes. And again, I do want to add some of those columns like what I added on the exterior of the factory, but instead I want to try and do that for the interior. But is it actually going to contain the lag? Well, I hope so. But what's next? Well, firstly, I want to try and make sure that all of these spotlights are actually turned on, because as of right now, they are not. And of course, the second thing is then to add in the columns and the pillars. And then lastly, I want to make sure this project's actually worth it. Does it contain the lag? Well, in a few minutes' time, we're gonna find out. A few minutes have passed and we've finally got ourselves our pillars. Now, they don't look fantastic, but they do the job. They provide a little bit of light, and their reflection on the coated concrete is exactly what I was going for. And of course, we've also added in our spotlights. All I've got to do is connect these two together, then our spotlights should actually turn on. And I actually did test this before I started recording, and I almost prefer it without the spotlights. It looks fine, and I'm sure in the night it'll be nice, but of course the spotlights do add a little bit of lag. So as of right now, I'm actually going to turn the spotlights off. But of course, before we actually end today's video, we have to ask the question, is my game laggier now, or is it less laggy? Which, of course, was the entire point of doing this entire project. Inside of this factory, it's okay. I can't see the exact amount of frames per second I'm actually getting, but regardless, it's fine, it's doable, it's playable. However, it's most certainly not ideal. Now let's compare that to the outside part of the map. And sure enough, we have actually got a lot less lag out here. My PC isn't stuttering as much, the game feels a lot smoother, granted it's not perfect, but it definitely does feel like we have gained a lot more frames per second out here. And especially, again, if we didn't actually build the structure, it would not have been this smooth. And not to mention, I'm actually quite happy with the way this thing looks. The entire point of this was to be a concrete square, but as usual, I've overdone it. But in this case, I think that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Some parts of this project still do look a little bit bland and a little bit boring, like this, for example. I could always add some additional features there if I really wanted to. But the main part of the factory, trying to reduce the lag, and then eventually trying to make it look decent, that has been successful. So overall, I'm very happy with this. And wow, look at the night sky about to appear over the factory. That is a beautiful timing for an outro. That is just about going to do it for today. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.